Hi, everyone. Good morning. Buenos dias. Thank you for tuning in today with Cafecito con HACE. And today, before we get started, I just had a few quick announcements to kick us off for this morning. So, just for you all to know, we do have a Recruiter Connect. So, new year, new opportunities on November 13th at 3 p.m. Central Time. Also, we have a coaching corner. So if you're interested in receiving, extra support with other coaches who share similar backgrounds as yourself, we have that for November 20th at 10 a.m. You should be able to see those links soon here in the comments. So make sure to check out these events. So hope to see you at our upcoming events as well. And then lastly, I'm here excited to talk with Julie Monsalve, who currently serves as the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer with Hyatt Hotels Corporation. So welcome, Julie. I'm super excited to learn a little bit more about your journey this morning.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you, everybody, for joining. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes. So before we get started into our conversation, here, obviously, we're here having some cafecito. So first, how do you like your cafecito or coffee prepared? Or what's your morning beverage of your choice?
So I have my Hyatt mug here. I usually do. I'm Colombian, so Colombian coffee with some French vanilla cream, and I have a lot of coffee. I try to cut down, but I probably do 3 or 4 cups a day. A
That's
lot.
awesome. Yeah, I grew up drinking cafes, abuelita, like the hot chocolate. So that's usually my go-to, like hot chocolate, the abuelita and stuff like that. But thank you again, Julie, for joining us this morning. So, for our viewers here, can you tell us a little bit more about your cultural and professional background?
Yeah, so I grew up. I was born in Colombia. Both of my parents are Colombian immigrants. We moved to New York, both, working class, um, the same. And then I moved to the southwest side of Chicago when I was in high school. So I consider Chicago my home, but lower middle class. Both my parents worked in as janitors at Midway Airport. So they were the first. My mom graduated from high school. My dad had no schooling, so I was the first to graduate from college, the first to really go into, and I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest of two. So I entered, I went to U of I, the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I had no idea. I didn't have a lot of guidance from my family or friends, just because none of them had reached that level before. So when I graduated from the University of Illinois with an accounting degree, and then started working at Allstate. I did a little bit of time at Deloitte and consulting, went to Allstate, and now I've been with Hyatt for 10 years. So most of my career has been with Hyatt. But again, I think one of your questions, and if you can see it from my LinkedIn, I kind of went from accounting to cybersecurity. But that's a little bit of, about kind of my cultural and professional background. Most of my family lives in Colombia. I speak Spanish. I travel back to Colombia, I try to do 3 times a year. And now I live in Orlando.
That's awesome. And thanks for sharing. It's nice to have another Illini. I also went to U of I, so we have that connection as well, or we're definitely, small. So, even though you're in Florida, I'm here in Chicago. And, again, thank you for joining us. So Julie, as you kind of were talking a little bit, your journey from, in accounting leading to cybersecurity strategy and a global hospitality company like Hyatt is really fascinating. So what inspired you to seek this new path into cybersecurity, and where were there moments where you questioned were you able to make this transition or not?
Yeah, it's interesting, Christian. I wish I could say I always knew I wanted to be in cybersecurity, and I'm one of those people who But that was not the case at all. I think I changed majors in college 2 or 3 times. I wanted to be a doctor and a lawyer because that's what my parents told me to be. And then I went into accounting because U of I had such a great accounting school. And then when I graduated, I was an internal auditor. I did tax consulting. And I think it was, and then I went over to Hyatt and did internal audit for Hyatt as well. I was still using, some of the accounting background, but I wanted to change, and I think it was just a mix of I was at the right place at the right time. Cybersecurity. Hyatt had just gotten funding for a Hyatt cybersecurity program 10 years ago, and I knew I was in the running club in Chicago with one of the recruiters at Hyatt, and I said, "Hey, is there anything new? I want to try something new." And he connected it. He connected me with our CISO, so our Chief Information Security Officer, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come join the team?" And it was supposed to be just a casual meeting, and it ended up turning into an interview. And I was still pretty hesitant because I have an accounting finance background. I don't have an IT background, and so I think that was a very pivotal moment. Like he was like, "Come on board. We have a compliance program that we want to start up." And I was like, "Are you sure? I don't have an IT background. I've never done anything with the technology folks at the organization." And he's like, "Yeah, we'll teach you. You can learn the technical stuff. We'll help you with training. We'll help you, but come on board. I want somebody who can lead, start up this compliance program." And I think that's really important. I think again, so it was being at the right place at the right time. Some of that was just luck. I had, at the time I was looking to do something different. I didn't want to leave Hyatt, and I connected with somebody within the company, and he connected me. But I think over the years, I was when I first started, I was like, oh, I was in all these meetings with IT people, and they're talking servers and all these acronyms. I had no idea. And I was like, I remember like crying. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? I made the worst, I made a mistake. And I think that was a really pivotal point for me, because I think what I had to do was, okay, I'm really good at, let me take my strengths, right? My strengths are in compliance. My strengths are in internal controls. I know how to follow frameworks and rules and keep us in compliance. I just needed to get better with the technical side. And so over the years, I took technical training. I had a great boss, a great mentor. I could ask them questions. I would Google stuff. And so I think that was, it was good for me to kind of say, okay, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at this side. Let me marry it. Let me see what I can take over from the compliance and internal controls place and apply it to the cybersecurity world. And that's what brought me here. I mean, I've become much more technical over the years. I'll never be an engineer, but I think I didn't realize how much the two worlds really, how much my internal control, finance, accounting side would really prepare me for cybersecurity.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I just wanted to bring up 2 points that I think you mentioned around, I think, just networking and having those connections, right? That you were able to connect with a recruiter who then like let you with your chief information security officer, right? And so again, for people listening in, connect with people on LinkedIn. And so definitely, in the chat, post where you're tuning in from, drop your LinkedIn's. You're gonna, Julie's LinkedIn is gonna be on there, and connect with each other, because I think again, you never know who might give you the opportunity, or just give you the opportunity, kind of like Julie, what you kind of mentioned. It was just like you were at the right time, right, at the right opportunity at the right time. And then also, I think you mentioned your transferable skills, right? Even though you don't have the degree. And I think, for our younger professionals or people looking into doing career pivots, right? Like you don't necessarily need another degree per se, but, if you're able to sell your transferable skills, and then kind of what you did, ongoing learning, right? You learned the technical sides that you knew you wanted to like fill in order to understand the teams better, which I think kind of leads into our next question. As the Deputy Chief Information System Officer at Hyatt, you're leading global teams. How has your career trajectory changed since you risen in this field? And also, what are those barriers that you still see maybe, as a Latina breaking into tech and into cybersecurity leadership?
Yeah, so I thought about that first question about my career trajectory last night, and I don't think my career trajectory has changed as I've moved up. My roles have changed. I think that um, I've led and started a number of different teams over the years. I think uh, I think what's changed the most with me is I have two little girls, having starting a family. I think that's been the hardest thing over the last couple of years. So I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. We really don't have a lot of help. I live in Orlando, but we don't have a lot of family help. I think that's been the biggest change, just because I didn't know what it was like to be a mom, much less a working mom trying to raise through the ranks. And my husband also works; he's trying to do the same thing in his career, and so it's been really hard for me to find a good balance. Because in the past, right, when I was single, or when I didn't have any kids, I could travel. I could, I just had a lot more free time. I had a lot more flexibility. Um, and since I've had my kids, I think that there's been, right, you cannot, I think you just can't do everything at 150%, right? I need to be there for my family. I need to, try and raise up the ranks. I need to be a good wife. I need to be a good mother. And so I think that's been the hardest thing for me to juggle the last couple of years. And so again, that has, I wouldn't say slowed me down, but at the same time, right, I think in the past where they could have been like, hey, do a speaking engagement here or travel here. Like, I just can't. I have to be here for my family, and so, and I don't want to. I think I don't, I don't want to miss that time away with my kids when they're little. So I think that's been the biggest change over the last couple of years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Julie. So for our next question here, for those in our community considering career pivots or entering new fields, where diverse represented is limited, what's one piece of advice that helped you make bold moves in your own career?
Yes, I think I didn't answer the last piece about, so I think this ties in with the last piece of your question.
Mhm.
I think it is really hard, especially in IT. There's not a lot of people that look like me or like you. There's not a lot of Latinos in
Mhm.
IT, much less IT, cybersecurity leadership, or IT in general. And I think some of that is just a function of, this is such a new space. Cybersecurity is just a new space. 10 years ago, you couldn't major in cybersecurity. Again, I kind of got in. I'm like a I'm like I'm an OG in the cybersecurity space, and I've only been here 10 years because it's just a very new field. But I think, again, I think what helps is, now that there's majors, there's certification programs. Like, if you want to pivot, there's boot camps now. These are things that didn't exist, 10 years ago, and we do. So I see a lot of people. We hire people who have multiple people on my team. Cybersecurity is not their first career. I have a pharmacist. I have some folks from the military. And so they've done certifications, gone back to school, done these boot camps, and then kind of entered into cybersecurity that way. And so I think, like I said, I can speak to that because I think that helps get into this space, especially at the entry levels, because there's always a need. It's a growing industry. The bad guys are not, they're with AI, they're only getting quicker and smarter. And so I think it is a career that you can pivot to, starting at the analyst level and kind of work your way up.
And then, Julie, what are some of those transferable skills? Like you mentioned, there's a pretty diverse people on your team. So, was there anything that that they brought, like a different perspective that maybe you didn't have your team? So, just like for viewers interested in going into this, like they're like, well, coming from accounting, was there anything that you could like tell folks from different background if this is something that they're interested in pursuing? Like, how do they sell that, right? Like, I feel like it's easy mentioning it, but like, what are you looking for? Maybe if those were more like of the soft skills, or anything like that.
I mean, it's always been, I think, my part of the success that I've had on the team over the years is the ability to, it probably helps me that I'm not super technical. I have to be able to explain very technical things to non-technical leadership, right? And help them accurately express the risk, express what we have to do, quantify it in dollars and money and resources. And I think it's really helpful if you are a good communicator and you can kind of bridge that gap, right? Bridge the gap and make it understandable to non-technical folks. I think that's what I've tried to do over the years. Because as you move up, again, if there's most of the problems, you're going to be working with folks that don't have, a technical background. And so if you throw a lot of big words and fancy IT jargon, they're just not going to get the risk. And so that's important. So again, communication, I think written and verbal, that's a soft skill. Excel, surprisingly, or data manipulation. My teams have to work with large volumes of unstructured data, and so any tools, AI has been a big one. We've been using Excel, any tools that can kind of parse and take, so we can analyze big chunks of data. I think that's a very transferable skill that we see in other areas, right? Data analytics, accounting. I think that's helped a lot just because we have to parse and sort through all these big, unstructured data fields.
Thank you. And also for the viewers watching, if you have any questions for Julie, feel free to put them in the comments and then we'll try to answer them. And so, Julie, I have one last question here before the audience to see if they have any other question is, cybersecurity is facing, potential talent shortage. Yet Latinas remain significantly underrepresented, as we just mentioned. So what role do you see experienced leader like yourself playing in building the pipeline and helping emerging talent see cybersecurity as a viable and exciting career path?
Yeah, I think it, on my side, now that I have the ability to influence hiring, I think it is setting up those opportunities, right? I try to have interns over the years. I try to do recruiting events. I think even just speaking to people about cybersecurity, there's so many different areas in cybersecurity. I think a lot of people, when they think about cybersecurity, it's the guy in the hoodie, hacking the computer, and there's not. There's compliance arms, there's vulnerability management, there's engineering, there's just different facets of not just. I think what people usually think of is pen testing, but there's so much more within this field. And so I think that's what I try to get the word out about. Go Google kind of the different areas in cybersecurity. If you have questions, feel free to send me an email and LinkedIn. But I didn't realize there were so many factions of cybersecurity. And so I think that's one avenue. Again, these boot camps I've mentioned, I know Chicago has several. But again, I think a lot of it is just, I've had really great mentors over the years. It's important. I like to mentor people because that's how, we bring each other up, right? And even if it's one person, I think that's made the difference. It's made the difference for me in my career as well.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned, just even Julie, like you're speaking up about cybersecurity. And sometimes if we don't see ourselves in those positions, you don't might think, that's not the right field or the right position for me, right? And so what you're doing, like you said, and you mentioned having a diverse representation, and just when you're at the table making those hiring decisions, right? And being able to influence that. So we need more people to, you know, speak up about their careers, right? I used to be a recruiter, and I didn't know about like food science or packaging engineers, right? Because I wasn't exposed to those fields. And, you know, really talking about the different fields and not just, you know, maybe the more typical fields that we're all known, like lawyer, doctor, teachers, right? Which are great professions, but I know there's very specialized fields that, you know, that we might not know of. And because, you know, being first gen, you know, not, you know, finding mentors later on. And, you know, you talked about how, you know, mentors really played a big influence in your career path. So I just want to thank you again, Julie, for again exposing more about your field to all of our viewers here, to, you know, Latinas, Latinos that want to go into this field, and just want to see if we have any other questions in the chat. And I think we might have one other question for you, Julie.
It says, is there any governance changes you are navigating through as AI impacts every aspect of business? Can you share any specific topics? Yes, so AI has been everywhere. It's been a big topic of conversation here at Hyatt, just because of the implications, right? There's LLMs that you can train. There's LLMs that large learning models. You can kind of buy your own. You can use vendors, and so some of the risks that we have to work through with the business, right? We want to enable our business to do their job, but some of it is like, how do we prevent, you know, Christopher from taking all our spreadsheets and sticking it into ChatGPT, and we don't know where that information goes. We don't know how it's protected, and so that's the kind of risk that we've been discussing at Hyatt, just because we do have customer information from everybody who stays at our hotels. So it's been really interesting. And then on the flip side as well is AI. Just like we're using AI to enable our business, the bad guys are using AI to. I mean, we've seen there's been some really cool stuff. They can craft, right? Now it can help. Before, you used to be able to see phishing emails. They'd be poorly worded, or it wouldn't be proper English. Now AI will write you the email. It'll craft you a perfectly stylized email, perfect English. And so the bad guys are getting really good, and they're using AI to come up, to make their hacking as a hacking tool. And so I think it's been really interesting because as they use it, we use it, right? And so it's kind of like a race. And so it's been really interesting to be able to think about, understand how the hackers are using it and how we can combat how they're using it.
Awesome. Thank you. Julie, we have another question here from Elizabeth. So you mentioned your team uses Excel for data cleaning and processing with other tools and technologies. Are your team using, and do you have an ideal state for your team tech stack?
We have, so I can't speak to the brand names of our tools, but we do use, so we use things like anything that can ingest. What's a good one in the market? One for data processing. So anything that does like visualizations is also very helpful. So you stick all the data and it'll visualize it, create charts, create reporting. I think for leadership to see trends. So any kind of tools that do that. Excel does it, but there are better types of tools that do kind of data analysis and reporting. And then our ideal state for the team's tech stack. We have a small but mighty team. I think we are trying to use AI within the tools that we have to automate. Anywhere where we could automate, or I can remove a manual process, right? If it takes one of my analysts 10 hours to do something, and we can work with a vendor, or we can use with a tool to automate it and get it down to an hour, or not at all, right? Or something we can automate it to the computer does it, and then maybe we do a review. I think that's where I would love to automate our manual processes through tools. And so that's what I think about a lot. Because Hyatt's been growing, we will continue to grow, but that doesn't necessarily mean for every acquisition I'll get five new people. And so I have to take the resources and the teams I have and be able to, maximize those resources.
Well, I think those are all the questions that we had for you today, Julie. I just want to thank you again for sharing your expertise and, be willing to connect with folks here. And again, the team shared your LinkedIn profile. So again, Julie, thank you for joining us with Cafecito con Ace, and we'll be in touch. Thank you everyone for joining us, and, we'll see you next time. Bye,
Thank you so much
everyone.
for having me. Cheers.